Hello,
Hello.
आवाज आएन नि तपाईँलाई हो
आएको छ।
Okay, hi everyone. I'm very excited to grasp the secrets of turning ideas into reality today. Welcome to Hult Prize at IOE 2021 pre-event Transforming Ideas into Reality, hosted by Nixon in collaboration with Generation Impact and supported by NREN. I am Suprema Shrestha. So Hult Prize is back in Nepal to find students prodigies on food for good theme. The Hall Prize is also known as Nobel Prize for Students from media sources worldwide, and it started in Nepal from TU and KU in 2016, and it is also the world's biggest student-centered event and crowdsourcing platform. It aims to take place in Nepal by mid-December. To know more about Hull Prize at IOE, please visit the Facebook page. So the link is provided in the chat box. You can go to the link and ask us if you have any questions. And let me tell you, It feels great pleasure to have the presence of Hult Prize at IOE team with us today. We have Mr. Jaikisan Panchiyar as Campus Director, Mr. Vivek Malik as Deputy Campus Director, Mr. Sagar Shrestha as Correspondent, Ms. Anisa Adhikari as Media Manager, Mr. Biplab Karki as Partnership and Outreach Manager, Mr. Anjil Biswakarma as Graphics Manager, Ms. Apeksha Ghimire as Social Media Manager, Mr. Nikhil Aryal as Technical Manager, Mr. Bisal Batsal as Marketing Manager, Ms. Tunisa Gevali as Sponsorship Manager, Ms. Devaka Vatrai as Event Manager. Also, we have campus representatives with us today. We have Mr. Rabin Ghimire from Himalaya College of Engineering. We have Mr. Naveen Joshi from Advanced College of Engineering and Management. We have Ms. Sivani Kurna from Lalitpur Engineering College. We have Ms. Nibedika Pokhrel from Kantipur Engineering College. We have Mr. Saugat Pandey from Thapathali Engineering Campus. We have Ms. Thariti Sri Shrestha from Catford International College of Engineering and Management. We have Mr. Prajwal Adhikari from Chitwan Engineering Campus. And we have Ms. Megha Maske from Kathmandu Engineering College. So today's workshop will be facilitated by Julia Sketleg, the founder of Generation Impact from Singapore. And Generation Impact is a resource platform with a lot of opportunities, a lot of events, and a lot of informations, and it helps you make a difference and connect with change makers for free. And it has been providing a platform to connect the youth who aspire to change the world. And you will be certified with the certificate. For that, you have to fill the feedback form, and it will be shared at last of this workshop. So I would like to take all of you to short journey of transforming ideas into reality. So hello, Julia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, you're welcome.
Suprema, thank you for the introduction. I'm always amazed at the size of your teams.
We're always happy having you in our event. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's my third time being here. I'm very excited. Yeah. Should I go ahead and start?
Continue your workshop.
Yes. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia. Suprema just already told you a lot that there is to know about me. I'm the founder of Generation Impact, which is a youth organization that shares resources and opportunity that help you make a difference. So you should check that out later. I'm going to be sharing a link, but right now you're not here to talk about me or hear about me, but you're here to learn about how to implement your passions and ideas into an idea. So I'm going to give a brief introduction into social entrepreneurship and that initial ideation stage. So if you right now have no idea what social entrepreneurship is and you have no idea where to even start creating an idea or creating a business, you're at the right place. You don't need to know any of that. I will hopefully be able to tell you all of this throughout the workshop. Feel free to use a chat box to send me any questions that you have throughout the sessions. I may or may not see them right away. I may or may not have time to answer them right away, but they are there. And if you have a really burning question that I wasn't able to answer during the session, then please get in touch afterwards. Generation Impact is on Instagram at Generate Impact on Instagram. So you can message me through there if your question doesn't get answered. But without any further ado, I'm just gonna share my screen. And we're gonna go right into transforming ideas into reality, innovating sustainable solutions to global problems, which is why you are all here. You're passionate change makers and you want to transform an idea, a problem that you've seen in the world, and you want to take that and perhaps transform a business idea. And who knows, maybe one of you in this room of 55 people is going to be the winner of Hult Prize next year and is going to walk away with $1 million, which is a pretty cool feeling. One of you could be that person, so that's exciting. Before we start, I want to start with a German proverb. I'm originally from Germany, so and I thought that this would be really fitting. And in German, we say, "Der Weg ist das Ziel," which means that the path or the journey is the goal. And I think that this is a really important sentiment to share as you are about to embark on a journey to win $1 million. And unfortunately, only one person is going to win $1 million. However, sometimes the journey is the goal. Sometimes the journey and the things that you learn along the way, the people that you meet, and the growth, personal growth you're able to make, that's sometimes even more worthwhile than the goal itself. That's a sentiment I wanted to start off with, just that you don't enter this as a non plus ultra, either I will win or I will not. All of you just being here have already won. First of all, you've won my heart. The fact that you're willing to spend your afternoon with me, I'm very grateful for. So thank you for that. But you're also winners of being leaders in this generation, being passionate to go out there and make a difference. So thank you for that. And thank you for being on this journey with me, because it is more than it is a journey more than it is a goal. Just a quick introduction. My name is Julia Schetelik. I'm currently studying psychology and global management in the States, although I'm right now in Singapore because I'm working for a boarding school here in Singapore. It's complicated, and I'm the founder of Generation Impact. I have this little world map here where it's all about places where I've been, because it sometimes gets confusing, and I apologize for that, but it doesn't really matter. So let's go. So social entrepreneurship. That just as a beginning definition, because this is what we're going to be talking about a lot, because we're going to think about how we can create a social enterprise. And if you are about to create a social enterprise, then you are going to be social entrepreneurs. Now, what is a social entrepreneur? What makes them social? What makes them entrepreneur? What makes her a social entrepreneur? All the girls and young women here today, I see you. I always say that I don't see enough girls and young women at the events that I'm hosting, and I think that girls need to aim higher and reach for the stars. And every young woman here today, I see you. Please keep being in these spaces. So social entrepreneurs, she, he, or they are individuals with innovative solutions to society's most pressing social, cultural, and environmental challenges. And this is a definition by Ashoka, who was really the founding father of social entrepreneurship. So social entrepreneurship has the business side. So I assume that you've heard of entrepreneurship itself, which is all about creating a business that has not yet existed in that form or that way before. But then we have that social element, and that's really about creating a business that not only creates profit for you or for shareholders, the people who invest in your company, but who also create value for society at large. And that could be social value, cultural value, environmental value, social justice value, all those different kinds of things, but it has that dual role. So a different way to conceptualize this perhaps is this Venn diagram that I like to use. So on one side, we have social impact, we have public value. Like the world may look at your organization and see, wow, we're grateful that they're here because they're creating something that we can all use. At the same time, it is sustainable and long-lasting. So this is where social entrepreneurship is perhaps different to nonprofits, and I'm going to talk a bit about that later. But at the same time, it may create profit and shareholder value. So if we were to conceptualize this between nonprofits and for-profits, it's really an in-between scale. So if you're familiar with how nonprofits and NGOs work, these I often use synonymously, is that nonprofits raise money from charities. So once a year they say, hello, we do all these great things, please give us money. And then they spend all that money and they need to crowdfund again. And that is an absolutely fine model. My organization, Generation Impact, is currently a nonprofit. So there's nothing wrong with having a nonprofit model. But the key difference between social entrepreneurship and nonprofit is that social entrepreneurship aims to be a bit more sustainable, because the problem with nonprofits and NGOs is unfortunately often that if a donor one day decides, oh, I'm not going to give you money anymore, then you have to discontinue your activities. So your activities, your success is dependent on someone else believing that your service or your product is worthwhile. So social entrepreneurship believes that if you have something that brings value to the world, and if you are really good at it, then people are going to be willing to pay for it. Or perhaps there can be a balance. Maybe you have one side of your organization that creates revenue, but instead of taking that all for yourself and putting it back into the company, you're putting it towards some kind of social goal. And that's where it differentiates itself from for-profit companies like Apple, Microsoft, like all the big names companies that you may or may not know. They're usually for-profit companies. They're companies who are there to create money, and they're trying to figure out what you are willing to give them your money for, if that makes any sense. So yeah, just keep that in mind as we're going along, that whatever you are thinking of, the activities that you're going to think through, the business models that you're creating, you may end up creating a nonprofit, but social entrepreneurship is really that intersection of, it needs to be sustainable, it needs to be long lasting. If your donors at some point say, we're not going to support this, are you still going to survive? Are you going to create social impact as well as a profit? So let's continue. I'm going to talk about theory of change today, but before I do that, I'm going to check chat real quick if there's any questions about social entrepreneurship. There don't seem to be any, but I'm going to give you a few seconds to holler at me if you have questions about social entrepreneurship. Maybe you're all already super familiar with social entrepreneurship and I just bored you to death. My apologies if that happened. All right, so now we're getting into the practical things of things. So theory of change, I have found a very useful tool to take an idea and create it into a business, because the problem with social entrepreneurship, if you've ever really dove deep into the literature, is that people get married to their ideas very quickly. So if you are convinced that your app or your website or your product is the thing that's going to change the world, we often reverse explain how we're going to make the difference. We take our product and our idea at the center and say, this is how this is going to make an impact. And theory of change reverses that. It throws your idea out of the window and really asks, what goal are you trying to achieve? What problem question are you trying to answer? And what needs to happen for that problem to be solved? So instead of starting off with an idea and making that idea fit a box, we're going to start with the impact you're trying to make and then figure out how you can make that impact. And that is really, really important, because otherwise you may create a product because you really, really like that product and you're really 100% sure that it's going to work. And you're trying to take the product and explain why it's going to change the world, but eventually it may actually not change the world as much. So that's why it's a really useful process to turn it around. Let's start with the impact you're trying to make and see whether there seems to be an obvious route that's going to create that. So let's start. Theory of change starts with you identifying a goal or problem or a problem question. So that can be anything at all. You've identified. Hello, I'm unable to share my screen anymore. Should I just try again? Something happened. There was someone who was like, no, we don't want to see your screen anymore. You're boring us. I love this, but I don't get any reaction. And I'm just like, all right, let's just continue and hope that anyone finds this useful or productive. All right. So we start off with a goal, a problem question, and then we ask what needs to happen for that goal to be achieved and what activities and products can achieve this. So we're really interested in preconditions. So like if all of these things are in place, this goal is to be achieved. This goal will happen. Okay, if these are the preconditions, what activities, what products can create the preconditions? So you end up with a flow chart where you start with a product at the bottom and you can very logically see the route all the way up. This is gonna obviously solve this problem. It's obviously gonna help me reach my goal. So we call this preconditions and outcomes. So everything is a precondition for the goal and an outcome of the lower level. So what needs to be happening for that goal to be achieved? What activities can achieve this? So you can very quickly see from the bottom up, this will lead to your goal. So that at no point of your flow chart, you have to ask yourself, okay, so we have this product and then we're gonna make an impact, but how are they connected? How do we get from our product making that goal? And theory of change really forces you to think about every single step of the link. Then sometimes we're also going to ask you about the connections that you're basing on. So what assumptions are you making? So certain things you're not going to be able to control. You're not going to be able to control every single connection. Some things are based on luck more than activities, or some things you may choose, I cannot really influence this. But if you are making assumptions in the process, you need to identify them. And if you're making assumptions that are perhaps a little bit far-fetched, you need to perhaps think about implementing something that will make that assumption become a clear strategy or goal. So I know all of this sounds a little bit abstract to you at the moment. So I'm going to talk you through an example, but only after I put on my air conditioning because it's getting warm. Asia, am I right? So I'm going to go through you to Generation Impact, which is my social enterprise, or at the moment we're more a nonprofit model, but we're working on that. And I'm going to talk you through my theory of change, or our theory of change. And our goal that we identified, or that I identified when I first started Generation Impact, it was to help young people make a positive impact in their communities. And this is quite a vague goal, and it's like absolutely okay if you start off with a vague goal. It may be more clear as well, that's absolutely fine, but it needs to be some kind of goal that you are passionate about. Now, I often get the question, how do you know what you're passionate about? How do you find out your true interests and what you're really good at? And I have other workshops where I'm talking about that a little bit, but just to touch on that really briefly, if you really have no idea what your passion and goal may be like, I really recommend people to reflect a lot. So start with yourself and start with your community. Talk to people, try to identify things that you are familiar with and that are affecting the people around you, because chances are, if you are very familiar with a problem, you are probably the person best qualified to come up with a solution. So I always say it wouldn't make sense if I went to Nepal and said, hey, I heard you have this problem, let me solve that. That would be ridiculous. I've never lived in Nepal. I've never even visited Nepal. You are the people who can identify the challenges that your communities are facing. So start within, start in your immediate community. Different reflection exercises that I really recommend is journal, read, draw your life. So you may want to sit down and start with when you were born and identify the events that have made you who you are and the people who have influenced your life so that you now are who you are. Create a mosaic of your identity. Really draw, okay, if I had to boil myself down to different parts, what would I be? Okay, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a student, I like doing this. And then when you start reflecting on these things, you may find actually this one aspect of my life really shaped me. Maybe I can pass that on. Oh, this is something that I really enjoy doing. Maybe I can make that a job. All right, that's all I'm going to say about finding your passion. If you want to chat about that more, maybe we can talk about it later in the Q&As. Now, so I started off with my goal of youth making a positive impact in their communities. Now, what I had to identify is what needs to happen so that young people can make a positive impact in their communities. And things that I identified, and I actually identified quite a few things, this is just a sample of things that may logical sense to you, is first of all, youth need to have the necessary skills. If you don't know how to make an impact in your communities, there's no way you will. Then youth need to have resources and opportunities. So if there's no opportunity for you to make an impact, if you don't have the resources that will help you, so skills and resources go together, then you can also not make an impact in your community. I also realized that young people need to have free time. Another thing that was also more circumstantial was young people need to be mentally healthy and have enough food and shelter. Youth need to have self-confidence to make an impact in their communities. So you may identify a lot of things that need to happen for your goal to be achieved. And the more vague your goal is, the more the more things you may identify. And don't get scared by that, because you are only one person and one organization. There is no reason that your organization needs to address every single one of them. You may realize, oh, I can only focus on 2 of these things, or maybe you can only focus on 1 of these things. But just having gone through the process allows you to recognize the complexity of the entire problem. And one day when your organization is really successful, you can look back at your theory of change and be like, hey, now that we have a little bit of time, let's go back and tackle this aspect and make our theory of change even better. Or when you're looking for collaborators and companies to work with, then you may want to look at your theory of change and say, hey, we are not helping young people be safe and have an education or have free time, but there's this other organization that does that. Maybe we can work together because we have a common goal. Another important part of this process of identifying different conditions, like what needs to happen for our goal to be achieved, is research and asking questions. I cannot stress this more. And of course, if you are very familiar with an issue, if you've grown up with an issue, if you've seen it in your immediate environment, then it's going to be a little bit easier. But there's nothing that goes beyond really talking to people, because you only have a limited perspective. And you want to do a lot of online research. Are there companies who've tried this before? Are there people who have thought about this longer than you have? Are there people who have different perspectives to you? So when you are identifying the complexity of the goal you're trying to reach, the impact you're trying to make, talk to as many people, read as many things before you even pick up a pen to create your business plan. The more you know and understand about your problem, the better your solution is going to be. Do not start with an idea, start with a problem. All right, I already put it 5 times across the slides, so I'm not going to talk about this anymore. Research, ask questions. The next step is then again, reflect and think realistically. Which one of these can I tackle? So one of the things that I realized, for example, I'm not going to be able to tackle that youth have free time, or I'm not going to be able to tackle the fact that youth are going to be safe and healthy. There are other organizations who are going to focus on that. I'm going to narrow down on youth having the necessary skills and youth having resources and opportunities and youth having self-confidence. And I just took youth having free time out of the equation and other things out of the equation. And that's something you may need to do too. So then eventually you are left with 3 preconditions, or maybe 2 preconditions, or maybe even only 1 precondition. I really recommend not going above 3, depending on how realistic it is, that you need to fulfill. So let's start with youth. In order to help youth make a positive impact in their communities, youth need to have the necessary skills. Now, I was thinking the easiest way to gain skills is to take part in training and workshops, just like you are doing right now. In order for young people to be able to take part in training and workshops, well, we need training and workshops to be offered in the first place. So next step, and this is kind of a product that we have, is training and workshops that either my organization or I am myself offering, or we're working with other organizations who can create that product for us. This may seem very logical to you, and you may be like, okay, this is kind of obvious, what's the big deal? Now, is there anyone who can identify a faulty reasoning in this process? Because I'm making one specific assumption here that I haven't included in my theory of change yet. If you have an idea of what I might have forgotten in this particular flowchart, in this specific moving from one box to the other, what do you think I've forgotten? Can you identify something that is missing here? What assumption am I making that may or may not be the case? There are no right or wrong answers. You may identify assumptions I'm making that I don't even know, and then that's helpful. So just give it a guess. Research. Yes, perhaps youth having the necessary skills. Maybe another part could be giving youth access to research, or me doing even more research. Yes, that's something that I talked about before. So I agree. Research is always a big part of the question. So Nishal, answer. Like I'm a scientist. I love research. So I think research to any kind of question can never be a wrong answer. Motivation, that's a really good point, Angel. Motivation is actually something that I identified later, and you're going to see it on one of my slides, and it's something that I said that's not something I'm going to be able to influence right now. But I put it on, I have it on my theory of change, knowing that this is something I may want to tackle in the future. So these are great things. What I was thinking about actually is that youth need to know about workshops and fellowships. So it's great if you offer workshops, and it's great like if youth take part in them, but you can only take part in the workshops that you know about. So this is a very obvious element that you may or may not forget about, and that's where marketing comes in. So this, going through this theory and realizing, oh, I'm assuming that just because I'm hosting a workshop, people are going to know about it and participate in it. But that's actually not true. In order for the workshop I create for people to take part in them, there's an element that's missing here, and that's advertisement. And other assumptions that I'm making. So for example, is youth are motivated to be part in the workshops. So whoever just said that, good job. That is absolutely true. But that's maybe something identifies I may or may not be able to change that. And then it's also youth having the time to participate in workshops. So that's something that I also identified. And then you have to be realistic. Can I change this, or am I just going to assume this? Okay, right now I'm just going to assume that people are motivated. And lucky me, at least 61 people today were motivated to take part in this workshop. So sometimes you're lucky. But this way we can start identifying products and activities. So the product or service in our case is the workshop itself. That's a very straightforward workshop. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a data scientist, so your product or service may be a lot more complex than me sitting here and teaching you about the theory of change. But it still helps to think about the bottom of your flowchart is the workshop and the product itself. Then from the assumption that we identified here, you may realize, okay, we need to advertise these workshops. We need to do some marketing activities to substitute for the assumption we're making here. And this process you're going to be doing for every single aspect of your precondition that you've identified for your goal. So that eventually you're going to have a huge flowchart with lots of products and activities that you know you're going to have to create and do in order for the preconditions to happen for your goal to be achieved. So another thing that I have when you go on my website is I knew that people need to have the resources and opportunities. So skills may come from workshops and like education-like things, but what about online volunteering opportunities or internships or apps that help you make a difference? There are resources that exist. So this was an assumption that I was making. I assumed, or I knew, that there are a lot of resources out there that help young people make a difference, but youth need to know about those resources in order to have them. So that's really other flowcharts. Or for youth to have self-confidence, youth need to have role models and advisors. So that's where mentorship became one of our other products and services. Now, mentorship doesn't just fall off a tree. If you want to find mentors, you need to network, you need to find collaborators. So I hope this way you can see how your product is secondary to your goal, and this flowchart helps you identify the activities and products and services that will help you identify your goal. All right, now this is a workshop, not a we're gonna listen to Julia talk at us, so I want you to try it. I'm gonna give you time to grab a paper next to you. It doesn't need to be anything crazy, but I want you to go through a process of theory of change and identify a flowchart that will help you achieve your goal. And this does not need to be the idea that you are going to submit for the Hult Prize. This may be something completely random. It doesn't even need to be related to the goal, but just for you to go through the process in the first place. So I know that the theme of the Hult Prize this year is food for good. So I've just dropped down a few ideas that may help you brainstorm when you find a theme or goal, when you're identifying your problem that you are identifying. So I thought about food security. So as the world population increases, how can we create food for a lot of people? Then we have the whole organic debate, like, is organic food really good for us? What are the risks here? What is a problem that we may need to fulfill here? We have vegetarian and vegan lifestyles. What problems may we identify here? We have plant-based milk and meat substitutes, supply chain. So like, what if we have oranges that fly in from South America to Singapore so I can eat them? Like, there's a big carbon footprint that happens there, or the carbon footprint of meat consumption, or food waste, or empowering farmers, sustainability, equal access to food. This is just me throwing things at you, so if you don't immediately have an idea, you can start here, but it could be something that is super not related to food at all. And I want you to identify a theme or a goal. So just take a paper and write it down. And if you're willing to, share it in our chat box. What is a theme, goal, or problem that you've identified where you're like, this is a problem I want to tackle just for the next 30 minutes or so. Just pick one and write it down. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for that. And I would love for you to share it in the chat box so we can talk about it a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, someone just posted in the chat, problem regarding to farmers. Now, how can you make that more specific? So what is a problem that the farmers have? How can we give a better life for the farmers? That is a problem question. And then you may already have a lot of different aspects that may happen for farmers to have a better life. You may also want to define what you mean by a better life. Does better life mean be healthier? Does it mean to be happier? Does it mean to be mentally healthier? Does it mean to be physically healthier? That may just help you think about it, but how can farmers, help farmers have a better life is a great vague problem statement to start with. Okay, I'm gonna give you 2 more minutes for everyone to write their things into the chat box. So I'm so sorry if I mispronounce names in this, but Sachin, food waste is a great theme. Now, how can we make that a problem statement? So a very easy way to make that a problem statement is, how can we reduce food waste? Or reducing food waste can be your problem statement. What else do I have? Parikshit, training to construction workers for better safety measures. That's already a product if you're thinking about it really. But if you want to create a goal here, then you can say, how can we help construction workers be safer? Actually, Parikshit, side note, I have a very good friend who's the founder of SDI Academy. His name is Sazad. He's a really great guy, and he is working with construction workers and migrant workers in Singapore. I'm going to just put the link here in the chat. And he identified that problem solution. He wanted to create better safety measures for migrant workers in Singapore. And he I don't think he won the Hult Prize, but he's an Ashoka Fellow, which is one of the biggest prizes you can win in entrepreneurship. He's an Obama Fellow, really, really great guy. I'm happy to put you in touch with him. If you're really passionate about this, you should check out STI Academy. Does anyone else want to share their problem statement that they've identified? Don't be afraid from making mistakes, because if you make mistakes, then we can learn. Then we can all learn from them. So a question that you may have, or something that you're struggling with, chances are that everyone's struggling with this. So, and I may also have made a mistake. So if you're confused, chances are everyone's confused. So it's usually if you're confused, it's my fault, not yours. So please say something. How do we find intersection of less costlier food and more healthy food? Yes, we can turn that to how can we make food cheaper and healthier. That is a very interesting, how can we deliver safe food? Okay, interesting, Navin. Can you explain to me what safe food means? Safe as in healthy? Does it mean we deliver it safely regarding for the people who deliver it? Low cost modern farming equipment. How can we reduce the price of farming equipment? I love that. Guys, you have really, really good ideas. I now feel embarrassed for my own mind map, because you've already put a lot of thought into this. Yes. I was also just thinking, I don't have this on my mind map, but if you are someone who delivers a lot of food, there's a lot of plastic waste that happens when you have food be delivered to you. So maybe that's something that Navin, that you're interested in. How can we reduce plastic waste in food deliveries? Mass production of food, that's also, okay, Narajan, how is this a problem statement? Do you want to, how can we mass produce food? Is that your problem question? Or is it, how do we reduce mass production of food? Why is that a problem you're trying to solve? What's the problem with mass production of food? Why does that need to be? Madan, okay, toxic food. Does that mean how can we prevent people from consuming toxic food? Part of that could be, how do we identify toxic food? How can we educate people about toxic food? Any last chance? Holler it out now. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. All right. Now that you've all hopefully identified, Nirajan, okay, thank you for clarifying that. So let me just read it out. In developing countries like ours, people aren't able to produce food in large scale. So I think that can be considered as a problem. Yes, I think that's really interesting. And I think Singapore actually can relate to that, because I don't know if you know that Singapore is a very, very small country with a huge population. So they have the challenge of how can we produce a lot of food on very small piece of land. And what they've actually started to do is they've built horizontal fields. So they have skyscrapers that are basically just farms. So instead of having a horizontal field, they just have a vertical field. So vertical farming, yes, Jay, gotta love vertical farming. So that may be something. But again, let's not start with a product, but that's a great problem that you've identified. Nutritious food, how can we help people consume more nutritious food? How can we produce more nutritious food? A lot of these questions would come in there. All right. Now that you've all hopefully identified a problem or a goal that you want to achieve, what preconditions need to be fulfilled for that goal to be achieved? Which one of these could you feasibly target? So now kind of start a second row underneath your problem statement. So if we go about mass production, what needs to happen for food to be able to be mass produced? Well, first of all, we need to have space. So that's an issue that Singapore has. We need to have space for food to be mass produced. We need to have the agricultural, we need to have the soil. I'm sorry, I'm not an agricultural expert, so I'm just shouting out ideas here. I know that you are the experts, and you're probably going to go down and research this a lot better, but I'm just going to shout out some ideas here, but for the like mass-produced food, so we have agriculture, what about the soil? Do people have the skills? Do we have the technology? All these different things that you can identify, and then you may see, this is something I can focus on, this is something I cannot focus on. And that's where you need to be a little bit realistic and consider the skills and expertise that you and your team have. So you may be an engineer and you say, well, I have no idea how to make how to train people, but I can build a skyscraper for you or whatever. Food waste from food wrappings. Yes. What, Sajina, I'm so sorry if I pronounce your names wrong. You are welcome to correct me on this. Serena, what needs to happen for food waste to be, for food wrapping waste to be produced? Maybe you need like alternatives to plastic, like plastic alternatives. People need to know about alternatives to plastics. Maybe it's about having people come in and buy food that's not wrapped in the first place. What needs to happen for food wrappings to be reduced? Maybe the wrapping itself needs to change. Maybe we need to eliminate the wrapping altogether. Maybe people need to be more aware of this. Maybe we already have all the things, but people don't use the things that we have. Yes, biodegradable wrapping like papers. So Sushant, you are already identifying a solution. So you have jumped from a product to a solution. So now you have to talk about, okay, biodegradable wrapping. What needs to happen for biodegradable wrapping to happen? You may need engineers. You may need researchers. You need to have advertisers. You may need to have the biodegradable wrapper. In order for people to use it, what needs to happen for people to use biodegradable wrapper? It needs to exist. It needs to be cheap enough so that people can buy it and people need to know about it. So see how it's not as easy as we need to reduce food wrapping papers and the solution is biodegradable wrapping, but we have biodegradable wrapping. How do we create that? How do people know about that? Why would people use it? What's preventing people from using it? All right, and the last thing is, we've basically already arrived here, is what products, services, and activities do you need to implement for these preconditions to be achieved? So if you've identified biodegradable wrapping, that's a product in itself. So what activities need to happen here? You need to have a team of researchers to actually create it. You need to have a marketing team that advertise it. You need to have people who are motivated and realize that this is a problem and want to solve it. There's a huge field here that you can dive into and really explore the complexities. And that's where, and someone else brought this up earlier, is that this is where research comes in. So once you have a product that you have identified that you may want to help, that's where you want to talk to your friends. That's where market research comes in. So you want to go up to your friend and be like, hey, I can see that you wrapped your food in plastic. Why don't you use this thing? Or I've invented this thing. Would you like to use it? What would prevent you from using it? At what price would you use it? Okay, Sushant, you said that here in Nepal people use traditional methods like leaves to make plates that can be used for wrappings. So that is a good idea. So now you need to ask, what is preventing other people from doing that? Is it that they don't know about it? Is it that they don't have access to the plants? Is it that it's just not popular? Is it that they're not motivated? Is it that it's not cool? So I study psychology, so I'm not an engineer who can come up with products, but I'm interested in everything around that. So for example, with biodegradable wrapping, we have biodegradable wrapping. So why aren't we using it? And that's really interesting. That's where motivation comes in. So this is my third workshop that I do anyway. I'm happy to give another workshop on motivation and emotion. Why are people motivated to do some certain things? And that's, for me, something that I think every social entrepreneur should know about. Why are people motivated to do some things? And again, this could be an entire 1.5 hour workshop in itself. But the short story is that people do the things that fulfill basic human needs. And the universal human needs that everyone has is the need for connectedness, for human relationships, is the need for competency, for the need to feel that they are good at something. And there's competency, connectedness, and autonomy. People need to feel like it was their choice, that they have control over their own decisions. So that's something really important to consider when you come up with a product, that it's not only about, oh, we have the product, why don't you just use it? Do people feel like you're imposing it? Do people feel forced to use this? Because then they may react and say, well, maybe I would have used it, but if you're telling me to use it, then I don't want to. That's called psychological reactance. You probably know that celebrities often advertise for things because we like the things that are the people that we like, if that makes any sense. So the reason that who's famous? Who's the famous person? If someone message in the chat, someone that is really famous. Selena Gomez. If Selena Gomez is like, oh, hey, I'm using biodegradable wrapping, then all her fans are going to be like, oh, wow, I want to be like Selena, because they want to feel connected. And they may buy a biodegradable wrapper, but it may not work. And then they lack competency. It just doesn't allow them to interact with their environment they want to, and then they get frustrated. And you don't want to be like, hey, you need to use biodegradable wrapper because otherwise you're destroying our planet. Then you're going to be like, excuse me, don't yell at me. Now I'm definitely not going to use your freaking biodegradable wrapper. So that's more on the psychology side of things. So I am digressing, but if you're interested in that, I'd recommend looking into the psychology of motivation and emotion. Okay, I was going to do this. So things are happening. All right. Now, once you've identified a product and are really, really sure about all these things, you may want to go into business model canvas. And when you are entering social entrepreneurship activities, this is usually what they're going to give you first. And I'm here to tell you that it's not going to work. Because if you start with a business model canvas, you are going to start with a product. But you really need to start with your solution and identify the complexity of the issues, which includes motivation. It includes what prevents people from doing it. It includes the entire complexity of the issue. But if you've gone through that entire process, then you want to create a business model. And then what I can highly recommend, and this is something I took from business model, business, blah, 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 I can't talk anymore, businessmodelsinc.com. And it helps you flesh out the business side of your product. So you may want to identify key partners, key activities, key resources that you need, the value proposition. By value proposition, we mean what makes your product unique? Why would people want to buy this? Business model canvas is usually used for-profit businesses. So I don't like using it for social entrepreneurship because it doesn't consider the social impact as much, but it really helps you to write a proper business plan if you really want to go into the nitty-gritty business details of it. Customer relationships, how are you going to distribute this? Customer segments, who is your target audience? Who would buy or engage in the activity that you are proposing? Cost structure, how much would this cost to people? Revenue streams, how are you going to make money? How are you going to get the money to create your impact? Such as a further resource once you've gone through the theory of change and identified these different things. Let me just have a quick drink. Do we have any questions until so far before I dive into some more general recommendations and advice? No questions? Feel free to message me later then. All right, so a few last words before we break off into the Q&A, and you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions and kind of stick around and work on your project and perhaps find some better strategies to implement it. I want to share some just general advice that I think may or may not help you on your journey to create a social enterprise. And that now that you've identified a product that you want to create, or, okay, wait, there's something in the chat. Thanks for calling me out on my stupid sentences. We like what people we like. Yes, after talking for an hour, I start not making sense anymore, Sandesh, I'm sorry. Someone asked to repeat the business model. That's absolutely fine. I recommend going into the Business Models Inc. because I'm not an expert on the business model canvas, but the business model canvas is just being able to break down your idea into key different areas. So actually, let's go on to the Business Models Inc. website. And then I can put that in the chat, and you're welcome to use this because there are better videos online than how I would explain this. So you can look at this later. So the business model, it divides your business plan into different segments. So for example, it starts with customer segments. Like, who would you derive the most revenue for? So for Generation Impact, it's really easy because my customer segment is young, ambitious people from ages 15 to 25. And they are probably the ones engaging with my products and services. Value proposition. How am I different from other youth organizations? What is it that only I can do, or how am I better than others? Revenue streams. How am I going to make money? If like in a perfect world, I would be able to do this just from the warmth of my heart, and just wait. You can't see what I'm looking at, right? Hold on. Your screen sharing is paused. Let me share my screen again. I don't think that you can see what I want you to see. No, now you see what I want you to see. All right. So yeah, we have customer segments, we have the value proposition, we have the revenue streams. Like, how are you going to make money? And who knows, you might identify that you make money because you gather donations. That's absolutely fine. But you may or may not find that one of your revenues could become monetizable. So I do a lot of workshops for bigger companies, and they sometimes pay me. So that way I can finance my activities, I can finance our website, I can finance my Zoom subscription and all the things that I need to put money into. And that way do it for free for other people. So maybe you can find a balance, and like that also goes back to like, what subscription model do you have? Who are you going to bill for things? Who is going to pay for things? Channels, how do you communicate with your customers? How do you deliver your value proposition? So that's especially interesting in the age of COVID. Like, are people going to be delivered by this per mail, or are you going to come to them? Are they going to connect with you through social media? If yes, what if they don't have access to internet? So things like that. Customer relationships, how do you make your customers like you? How do you build that relationship? So everything in starting a business is making people actually feel connected to your company. How do people feel connected to your product? What makes Jay, who's one of the leaders of this event, ask me to deliver the workshop and not others? And hopefully Jay and I have a good working relationship, just like you have to have a good working relationship with your customers. So then the key resources, so like, what people do you need? What knowledge do you need? What other resources do you need to run your business? So you may need a truck, or you may need cars, or you may need a person who's really good at engineering. You may need to partner with other organizations, especially if you're doing things that you or your team cannot do. And you need to have a cost structure. How is this going to cost? How are you going to make money? All right, let me switch screens again. There we go. And I had a message in the chat. How to make future assumptions about what problem the world is going to face in the future and is worth creating a solution in the present. That's a really good question. Wait, why is this? Okay, That's a really good question. Yeah, I think in that regard, market research comes in, and talking to young people and researching trends in the world. So, and you may come up with different ideas for different things. So I know that Microsoft, for example, they hire a team of philosophy professors to just come up with random ideas for different futures that may or may not happen. And they are going to put a team on each and every one of them and say, okay, well, if this future happens, this team is going to identify something for this. This team is going to identify something for this. If this future happens, we're going to create this. So unfortunately, a lot of it is a little bit of guessing and hoping. But creating a business, especially a social enterprise, is all about also being adapted. And that's why I think so let me move away from the business model canvas, because this is not good. Let me go back to the theory of change a bit, because this is why this is so important, because it puts your problem at the center as opposed to your product. So if you are worried about uncertainties in the future, it's good to start with the problem you may identify, because helping young people make a positive impact in their communities is a problem that may always exist. And if you have a vague statement like, how can we help people live healthier? How can we create packaging that is sustainable? Then that's the question that you orient yourself around. And if things change, you can always move your theory of change around. You can say, okay, well, this condition is actually fulfilled now. We don't need to care about this anymore. So we're going to not engage in this product anymore. And that's the flexibility, and that's the mindset you need to have as a social entrepreneur, because the worst thing that can happen as a social entrepreneur is to get married to your idea, to be like, oh, this was our product and it's going to solve the world. And you don't realize that the world doesn't need your product anymore. And there's unfortunately a lot of really sad stories about, especially people who look like me. Like, I often talk about white saviorism, like the Western world barging into like developing countries who are like, oh, we have the perfect solution for you. And then they don't realize that the solution actually creates more harm than good. So my vague answer, I don't know if I hope that this answers your question, is if you continue to start at the problem and be flexible and constantly reflect on how you're achieving that, you're going to be able to adapt to futures. So you may not be able to predict it, but once you get a little hint of it, you're going to be able to adjust to it. So did that answer your questions? Oh, Jay just said that that they're going to host a workshop on the business model canvas, which is great for me because I'm not very, very good at it. So perfect. This is how we complement one another. All right, let me go back to advice that I wanted to give you. Some advice on picking a group. I think a big issue in social entrepreneurship is, especially with college students, is that we work with the people that are our friends. And that can create issues, which probably all of you are already aware of. But when you pick your team, make sure that right from the start, you're very intentional of who you onboard. Don't onboard people just because you're friends with them and because they're like, oh yeah, like I like hanging out with you and this is something that we can do together. Be very intentional about this, because otherwise you onboard people who are not committed to the product, but committed to you. And that only creates relationship problems. So when you identify team members, it's really important to have a first initial conversation like, hey, how committed do you think are you to this? What roles do you want to take on? And be very specific about the different expectations you have for each other. So don't just be like, hey, you want to join us? Okay, cool. See you next week sometime so we can chat about this. Have a very serious conversation about, okay, if you are excited about this, I would love to have you part of our team, but are you willing to spend 5 hours on this every single week? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to do all these things? And that transition to a friendship, to a professional relationship can be really hard. But if you start having a conversation about that right at the beginning and not only when problems start, that can eliminate a lot of problems. So have that initial conversation about, hey, how is this going to work? You know, we're friends, but I'm also going to need to ask you to do things. I may give you critical feedback. How are we going to handle that? So when you start off having these conversations, it's going to get a lot easier and prevent a lot of problems. Also, success curve. I really like this image. People think always that success looks like this, but success really looks more like this. There are a lot of ups and downs. There are a lot of failures. There are a lot of learnings. So don't expect things going to be hard in the beginning and easy later. It is a labyrinth. It is a labyrinth of ups and downs. You're going to have successes and you're going to have failures. And I encourage you to push through that, because I know a lot of people who have entered to the Hult Prize and ended up not winning, but they were able to get funding elsewhere, or through the feedback that they gathered, they modified their idea and came up with a different idea. So don't give up and don't be too focused on, oh, if this is going to give me the $1 million, I'm done, and if not, I have failed. You may win the $1 million and your journey has only begun, and you may win the $1 million and you may have actually already come a long way. Also stay motivated. I think depending on the product that you create, it's easy to get very frustrated with the product that you create and whether you are really making a difference. And one thing that I encourage you all to think about is collateral impact, that you may or may not, your product or your service or your idea may or may not be successful, but the relationships you build and the people that you inspire along the way may be what makes a big impact in the future. So just a random idea, for example, you may not win the Hult Prize and you may end up abandoning your idea and never come back to it. But you happen to talk to a friend of yours about, hey, you know, this is actually a really big problem. I'm working on this problem. And yeah, that's really interesting. You say bye to your friend, you don't stay in touch. But that friend learned something in that conversation, ends up becoming the president of some country. And because he learned this from you, he's creating a policy that actually makes this impact more easy. So sometimes you don't realize the impact you're having just because of the relationships you're building and the things that you talk about, because impact is more subtle than we can sometimes measure. And you got to believe that you are making a difference. Otherwise, you're going to get demotivated very quickly too. Give you a different example, like my product is a website. I'm going to show it to you later. And I know how many people enter the website, but I have no idea whether I'm helping them or not. They could find a resource on my website that changes their life forever. They may end up at a conference where they meet their business partner that gets them to become the next Steve Jobs. Who knows? And I may never know about it, but I need to believe that if just one person of the 50 or 60 or whatsoever people who are in this call, if just one of you goes out there and makes a difference, even if you never tell me about it, that it will have been worth it. Last two things, keep seeking feedback. I think we already talked about that a little bit. It doesn't make sense to get married to your products. Keep going back to your theory of change. Consider what's going to happen. Consider changes in the environment. Consider changes all around. And ask people what they think, and don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to admit that you identified the wrong problem or that you need to change something. And most importantly, please take care of your mental health. Social entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, and teamwork is hard, and all of that can be very exhausting, and you cannot pour from an empty cup. You may think it's selfish to take care of yourself, but you can only take care of your product, your business, and your employees or your coworkers if you are at your peak, if you have energy available, if you are mentally healthy. So make sure that you are mentally healthy. All right, we're going to go into a Q&A now where you can ask me lots of questions. Let me just quickly show you my social enterprise generation impact, just if you're looking for more resources to find on social entrepreneurship, or social entrepreneurship is not the only way to make a difference. And if you want to browse different ideas on how to make a difference, I welcome you to check us out. Let me send this to the chat. Let me put our Instagram in here if you want to stay updated on the things that we do. So you may end up saying, I don't need to be the next Nobel Peace Prize winner. I may not have the idea that's going to create an impact. You can still make a huge impact in the world by becoming an activist, by raising awareness, by educating yourself, by doing small acts of kindness. So I have resources here on downloading apps that can help you make a difference, by reducing your food waste, by becoming trained as a counselor. LibriVox is a really good resource that helps you read audiobooks to people who may not be able to read themselves. There are different resources here on how to reduce your carbon footprint. If you end up not winning, I recommend going on find funding for your initiative. And there's lots of resources here how you can find funding for your idea that the Hult Prize may or may not give you. I have resources on how to take care of your mental health. If any of you are teachers, I recommend checking out our resources for teachers. If you just want to be inspired and read about other change makers, I recommend checking this out, becoming an activist, browsing youth organization if you're just interested in that. We also have a blog where we often have young change makers share ideas and all that things. So I recommend checking this out. And if you want to stay up to date on the resources that we share and the workshops that we create, and right now we have a mentorship program going on if you want to check that out, please do get in touch. I will try to answer all your questions. If there's anything I can do for you, I'm always here to help. That's all that I have planned from my side. Any questions about Generation Impact, about me, about theory of change, about managing a team, about the weather in Singapore, anything that I can still help with? Right, there were some questions here. How can we narrow down our ideas after brainstorming and research? I think that it comes really down to going back to the theory of change and identifying the different things that you want, like identifying your goal and then the preconditions. And you are not going to be able to tackle all the preconditions that will help you create your goal. So you may say, hey, I would like to be able to solve all the world's problems, but I can really only focus on this. So sometimes it's just pick and choose and realize, what are your skills? What is there a need for it? And are people going to be willing to pay for it? Any other ideas? So Vit, what exactly of theory of change what questions do you still have about theory of change? I don't think anyone wants to hear me go through it again. As I said, if you don't have any questions or you want to talk about this in person later, please get in touch over Instagram or email me at, there's the link to my email address. This is my email address. Someone will email you there. And I think if you joined in later, so Sovit, maybe you came in later and you missed the part where I was talking about theory of change. I think there's someone recording this, so you're going to be able to go on YouTube and watch it later. And if I was speaking too quickly or something like that on YouTube, you can also slow it down and just go back to certain things. feel free to email me, message me. And if not, I hand over to Jay or Suprema if they want to close it off. Yes, Kevin, you will get this recording.
Okay. So that was really great, Julia. Thank you so much for everything. Like, I like that one. Like, you like people who like people you like. Like, what was that exactly?
I think someone wrote it down here. Someone was making fun of me. We like what people we like.
Actually, that's really, we get influenced by people, like, so in real. We just get attracted to people, what people like, and we start following them.
Oh,
that was a beautiful session.
Sorry, I just got another question. Do you have plans to recruit people for Nepal in your organization? Yes, I'm opening up, recruiting a new cohort of employees this December. So follow us on Instagram, stay up to date, subscribe to our email list on our website, and then you'll stay up to date, and you're very welcome to come apply to become part of my team. In fact, I have lots of people who get to know me in these workshops and then choose that they want to hear more of me talking at them, which is strange.
So do we have any questions from audiences? Again, I'm asking Julia, like.
Yeah, please ask anything. Like you can, if you want to ask about generation impact, or why the hell do I live in the US? Am I from Germany? Am I currently in Singapore? It's a long story.
Okay, I think we don't have any question. Like,
That's
I think it was crystal clear. Everything you explained was like so clear to us, so we don't have maybe. So I think we don't have any questions. So I think we will like provide you the feedback form now. So I think, okay, so Mrs. Rekisan Panjier has provided the feedback form to all of you. You can fill the feedback form, and if you want to re-watch the video, we will provide it on YouTube. So yes, so let's have a small selfie time right now with Julia.
Yeah, actually one more thing, to get certificate, you must fill the feedback form, everyone.
Julia was horrible. I hated all of it.
Yeah, actually you're great, Julia. It was really awesome workshop. As you know, like it was the first level of the Entrepreneurship Talk Series, and it was really awesome. I hope guys, everyone enjoyed this workshop.
Yeah, please do get in touch. I'm not this scary far away person. You can message me and we can talk about Star Trek.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Exactly.
I even upgraded my slides for you. Did you like the people who've seen it before? I made them nicer for all of you.
Yeah, actually I liked those, like, like colors and graphics there. It was really good.
Thank you.
So thank you, Julia, so much. And I hope.
Please stay in touch. Please message me on Instagram. I would love to hear from all of you, what you're up to, and just chat with you. Please get in touch. Oh, the slides. Yes, of course you can get the slides. Let me share the slides with you. Hold on. Let me share the slides with you.
And if anyone wants to speak, share the experience as well, please raise your hands or chat message drop in the, you can say you'll on
Meet and greet with you, Julia. All right, here's the PDF of my slides if anyone wants it. Or not. Okay, need to upload it first.
Okay, I think there is question, Julia. Which step of theory of change in the chat box from Assis?
Oh yeah, which step of theory of change do you feel is difficult? I think for me, it's all about identifying the assumptions that you're making. So I think it's very easy to see it very clearly, like, oh, obviously if I have this product, then it's going to make this change. And it's usually easy to identify a product, and it's easy to identify a problem, but it's hard to identify everything around it. It's hard to I've totally made that mistake. Like when I first created my resource browser, like my website, I was like, hey, it's a website. It's awesome. Why wouldn't people want it? And then I was like, oh, just having a website doesn't really change anything. People do need to know about it. Shit, I need to do marketing. Gross. So I think that's a hard thing because you don't see your own shortcomings. And that's why I really recommend talking to other people about your theory of change, so they can say, hey, why do you think this is automatically going to lead to this? I think you need to rethink this. So talk to other people about it. I'm also uploading the slideshow for you now. You should have access to it. Sorry, I wanted to paste it into the chat and it didn't work. I don't know why. Okay.
Okay, there is one more question, Julia, in the chat box.
Okay, let me just quickly change this. Okay.
How do you manage your time for academics and your work?
Oh, I love that. I don't. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm having a really weird time at the moment because I'm a full-time student. I manage a company full-time, and I'm also working full-time at a boarding school, which is not a great thing to do. I think for me, the biggest advice I would give about time management is actually to take breaks. Because, and this may sound counterintuitive, but if you do a lot of things, you have a lot of things that require your energy and a lot of things that you put your energy into, but that energy needs to come from somewhere. So if you don't have the energy, something that would take you usually like an hour or two is suddenly going to take you like 5 hours. And that's where you start not being able to keep up with your work, because if you're so tired that you can't spend the time on it. So rather take an hour of an intentional break, watch some Star Trek, eat some good food, don't think about anything, and then get back to it, because you're going to feel much more energized. And I don't recommend this whole pushing through. Also sleep, guys. Like, I don't know, this whole trend from college students that they think that they don't need to sleep. You need to sleep. So yeah, time management. Also, one personal tip I have is when you write to-do lists, I assume that you all write to-do lists. If you don't write to-do lists, write to-do lists. But behind to-do lists, write how long each element is going to take you. So if you know, writing this email is probably going to take 5 minutes. Recording this video is probably going to take 2 hours. Preparing for this workshop is probably going to take 4 hours. And then when you look at your to-dos, then it's not going to be too overwhelming, because often when we look at our to-dos, it's like, oh my God, I have like 20 things to do. But the truth is that each of those 20 things is going to take different amounts of time. Some of them are going to take very short time. Some of them are going to take longer time. So sometimes when you're like, oh, I don't really want to do any work, but I have like 15 minutes until I'm going to have dinner. So I'm just going to write this email real quick. And that way you're going to get to-dos done really much faster. I have one question. What not to do as well in regards to time management? Not sleeping. That's the worst thing you can do. It's just to sleep 2 hours every day, no matter what you tell yourself. I study psychology. If you want to hear about the things that are going to happen to your brain if you don't sleep, I'm very happy to tell you. I have a question here. What obstacles did you face when you started? How did you solve them? What you learned from them, and what you can suggest us? Wow, that's a whole presentation in itself. I think a big obstacle is keeping yourself motivated and pushing through adversities, because you're going to face criticism and you're going to face people not liking what you do. I have this really funny video, if you want to watch it, with Stefan from Project Caritas. He's a YouTuber and he talks about sustainable products. And in that video, I'm telling him that I thought that when you are trying to make a difference in the world, something very naive, hey, I want to just help young people make a difference. I thought that people are just going to be nice about it, but turns out they're not. People are always going to find some things to complain about. And it can be really discouraging if people criticize you. I think that's actually what I found the hardest, or one of the hardest things, to push through those challenges and not just be like, oh my God, I'm not really making a difference, I should just give up. But then there are moments where people message me and they're like, oh my God, this workshop you gave half a year ago, where there were only 5 people who showed up, it actually really like helped me a lot. And I'm like, oh, okay, I am making a difference, glad. So sometimes we just got to keep going because we believe in it. I think also I learned a lot about team management in the past 2 years, about being very specific with people. So when I first started Generation Impact, I gave my team a lot of freedom because I was like, hey, I don't pay you, so I understand that I can't tell you what to do. And I thought that people would be really excited to have lots of freedom, but the truth was that they just felt very lost, that they didn't know what to do, and they felt frustrated because they didn't feel supported. So now when I'm managing my team, I have very clear expectations. I have deadlines. This is what you need to do, and here's all the materials that will help you do that. And if you have something that you want to do, then you come talk to me. So finding that balance between providing structure and deadlines, and at the same time encouraging creative ideas and encouraging people bringing in their ideas, that's something that I've always not struggled with, but that's always been a challenge. And something that I identify in other people perhaps more than in my own organization is how to approach collaborators and how to communicate and how to collaborate across cultures, because communication is always the thing that goes wrong, especially online. And it's really important to be very clear in your communication, to be very polite. And that's something that I feel very passionate about, that I encourage all of you to learn more about, and how to communicate, how to approach collaborators, so that you don't because I'm someone, like, even someone writes me a rude email, I will reply and be like, hey, let me be the person to tell you why this was rude so you don't make this mistake again. But the truth is, most companies are just not going to reply. So that's something that I see other people facing, and that's something that I'm frustrated about other people. Team management is the toughest thing in nonprofits. Oh yes, it's that in communications. I hope this answered your question a little bit, Savit. Also, shout out again to all the young women in this call, because you are not here enough. There's always few girls, and I see all of you, and you deserve to be here. I feel like everyone's like, oh my God, she's so boring. Can we please leave?
No, actually, it is really interesting. So they are quite.
Okay, one more question. Should we focus on our strengths and weaknesses? If yes, how can we balance between these two? Well, I think you should focus on your strengths, because the strengths are what you are good at, and you need to make the world a better place by using the things that you're good at. And so, yeah, stay positive, focus on your strengths, but be aware of your weaknesses, and don't be ashamed of your weaknesses. So, of course, it's always good to work on your weaknesses, but if there's something that, I gave this in a public speaking talk the last time I was here, that like, own your weaknesses. If you're someone who, like, what happens to me after I've given like an hour of a workshop is that I start not being able to pronounce words. Like, you've seen this several times where I'm like, okay, I can't talk. Like, just laugh about it. And I think the same thing applies to organizations to a certain extent, that if you're someone who is very bad at, like, we have one person that I'm working with here who always manages to send emails to the wrong people. Like, he always uses the wrong email heading. And at this point, it's just like, and he owns it and he apologizes for it. And it's just something that he laughs about. And that is a good way to do it, because if you're going to be like, oh my God, everyone's going to hate me, then you're going to become insecure, and that's going to reflect in your leadership. And you deserve to be confident in your leadership.
Okay, there is one more question, Julia.
How can we narrow down our ideas after brainstorming and research? Yeah, I think I talked about this already a little bit. It's all about identifying a problem and breaking it down into different elements, and then being realistic about what you can and cannot do. Because you're not going to be able, like once you identify a problem and really recognize the complexity of everything that needs to happen for that problem to be solved, do not take on all of it, because that's just not possible, especially not if you're only one person still. So then you just need to be realistic, and then you need to go back to your strengths and weaknesses and say, hey, it would be great if I could do this, but I can't, so I'm not going to do this. So that's just where a little bit of realism comes in, if that answers your questions, David. Okay. If there are other questions that come up after this workshop, just message me on Instagram.
Yeah, I think it's for today. So Suprema, and take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Julia, for your beautiful session. It was really, 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 really good. And I just love your sessions every time. We met in Quantum Hack and before that workshop, and we're again here sharing experiences, sharing knowledges, sharing informations. The more we share informations, the more we get informations. And thank you so much for everything you're doing for us and Singapore, Nepal. And you're just always ready joining us. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for being with us. So what's the time in Singapore there?
It is now 4 p.m. and I start working in 45 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's going to be 2 here in Nepal.
Oh yeah, so I wish you all a wonderful afternoon. Thank
you for being with us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you all. Bye-bye, thank you for having me.
And I want to request all of you to fill the feedback form. If you want to get certificates, fill the feedback form and tell us how the workshop was, how Julia was explaining everything, so that we can call Julia again in next workshop.
How boring.
It wasn't horrible. It was really beautiful. Okay.
And in all seriousness, if there's something that you didn't like, please tell me. Like, I'm always up for feedback and want to improve and make this a better experience for you all.
Yeah, that's necessary. So I request everyone to fill the feedback form. And we're getting a lot of thank you messages for Julia for the workshop. Beautiful workshop. Okay, thank you, everyone. So shall we end the workshop now?
Yeah, we can. So thank you, Julia.
You have to end it when it's the most fun. It's a German saying. I know, we Germans are a lot of fun to be around.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So thank you. You can just drop the call now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.